They called it the Golden Age of Hollywood, a time when the silver screen shimmered brighter than the sun, and every smile, every glance, every line delivered by those stars felt like pure magic. From the 1930s to the 1950s, Hollywood wasn't just an industry, it was a dream factory. It created gods and goddesses out of ordinary people and projected perfection onto millions of screens across the world. But behind the glitz, behind those golden spotlights, there was another Hollywood, darker, secretive, and deeply human. It was a world where fame came with chains, where desire was forbidden, and where people lived double lives just to protect their image. This is the story of that hidden Hollywood, and at the center of it all stood one man, a man who claimed to know everyone and everything. His name was Scotty Bowers. Scotty wasn't a movie star. He didn't direct, produce, or write any of the glamorous films of that era. In fact, he started out as just a gas station attendant, but somehow he found himself in the middle of Hollywood's most scandalous underground network, a man who quietly supplied companionship, connection, and intimacy to the biggest stars of the silver screen. To the world, Scotty's story sounds almost unbelievable. How could a man at a simple gas pump become a confidant to some of the most powerful names in show business? But in post-war America, when appearances mattered more than truth, people like Scotty filled a need that no one dared to talk about publicly. In 1946, just after returning from World War II, Scotty got a job at a Richfield gas station on Hollywood Boulevard. It was an ordinary job at first, changing tires, filling tanks, washing windshields. But this was no ordinary neighborhood. The gas station was just a few miles from Paramount Warner Brothers and the Beverly Hills mansions where the legends of cinema lived. It wasn't long before familiar faces began pulling in, stars, directors, agents, all of them part of that glamorous world. And one night, as Scotty would later recall, a famous actor, someone whose name he never revealed, invited him for a drink. That one meeting changed everything. Word spread quickly, quietly. Scotty wasn't just a handsome young man, he was someone people could trust, someone who didn't gossip, who didn't judge. And soon he began connecting other men and women who wanted what Hollywood wouldn't allow: freedom, intimacy, and understanding. This wasn't prostitution in the way people imagine. Scotty insisted he never took money for himself. What he offered was discretion and connection in a world that punished people for being who they were. The Hollywood of that era was obsessed with image. The studios had morality clauses written into every contract. If a star was caught in a scandal, an affair, a same-sex relationship, or even something as simple as being seen in the wrong place, the studio could destroy their career overnight. So the stars played their parts on screen, and off-screen too. Cary Grant and Randolph Scott, for example, were rumored to be more than just bachelor roommates. Rock Hudson's publicists worked tirelessly to make him look like the perfect ladies' man, while behind closed doors, he was living a life he couldn't reveal. And then there was Katharine Hepburn, fiercely independent, uninterested in Hollywood's version of femininity, and according to Scotty, a woman who simply refused to play by anyone's rules. Scotty claimed that he helped all of them, not out of profit, but because he believed everyone deserved happiness. As he once said, "People were lonely. They needed someone to talk to, someone to be with. I just helped them find each other." His gas station soon became the most famous, unofficial meeting spot in Hollywood, a place where secrets were exchanged as quietly as the fuel being pumped into a Cadillac. People knew they could come to Scotty for companionship, men and women, gay or straight, stars or ordinary workers. Everyone was equal in the shadow of that neon Richfield sign. To outsiders, it might sound like scandal or sin. But for many of those trapped by the studio system, it was liberation, a rare moment when they could be themselves. Of course, none of this was ever spoken about publicly. In the 1950s, even rumors of homosexuality could end a career, or worse, ruin a person's life. The press was hungry for scandal, and the studios would go to great lengths to protect their stars. They would arrange fake marriages, create alibis, and bury stories before they reached the front pages. And Scotty, the quiet man at the gas station, became one of their silent protectors. But how much of it is true? That's a question that still divides Hollywood historians. When Scotty finally told his story in his memoir Full Service, and later in the 2017 documentary Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood, some called him brave for breaking the silence. Others accused him of betraying the dead, revealing private lives that were never his to expose. Yet, no matter where you stand, one thing is undeniable. Scotty's story opened a hidden door into a part of Hollywood history that had been erased for decades. A history of real people, human, flawed, passionate, forced to live in the shadows of their own fame. And as we look back on that glittering era, the gowns, the tuxedos, the premieres, we can't help but ask, was the golden age of Hollywood really golden? Or was it a carefully crafted illusion built on secrets and silence? Because sometimes the brighter the spotlight, the darker the shadows it hides. By the late 1940s, Scotty Bowers had become more than just a name whispered among Hollywood insiders. He had become a myth. Those who knew him said he could get anything for anyone, and yet you'd never hear his name in the papers. There were no photos, no scandals, no leaks. In an age before tabloids became powerful, discretion was currency, and Scotty was rich in trust. The Richfield gas station was his stage. Every night, luxury cars would pull in, Packards, Lincolns, Cadillacs gleaming under the streetlights. And behind the wheels were faces the world knew, stars whose posters decorated every teenage bedroom across America. But here, in the quiet dark of the boulevard, they weren't stars. They were human beings, lonely, anxious, desperate to be understood. Scotty had a rule: never ask questions. If someone wanted companionship, he'd arrange it. If they needed someone to listen, he'd be there. It wasn't about lust, it was about freedom, a rare kind of human connection that fame had stolen from them. One night, a young, handsome actor, known for his rugged charm, confessed to Scotty that he was terrified. His studio was forcing him to go on fake dates with actresses to protect his masculine image. "I can't live like this forever," he said. Scotty simply smiled and replied, "You don't have to live forever like this. Just live tonight, like yourself." These weren't moments of scandal. They were moments of relief. And Scotty, the war veteran who had seen death and chaos, became a quiet healer for broken souls wearing designer suits. He also spoke about Katharine Hepburn, one of Hollywood's greatest legends. To the world, she was bold, independent, and mysterious, the perfect embodiment of self-confidence. But Scotty claimed she came to him looking for something else entirely. According to him, she wasn't interested in men, and he helped her find female companions, discreetly, kindly, without judgment. Then there was Cary Grant, the charming leading man who embodied the perfect gentleman. He was every woman's dream, every studio's pride. But Scotty hinted that Grant's private life was far from what the magazines showed. The people we idolize were often the ones who suffered the most. Trapped by the very dreams they sold to the world, they gave us fantasy and lived in fear. As the years went by, the Hollywood Scotty Bowers once knew began to fade away. The gas stations were replaced by sleek offices. The stars who used to whisper his name in the dark grew older, and many of them passed away without ever revealing their secrets. The studio system, that mighty machine which once controlled every face and every story, finally collapsed under the weight of modernity. By the late 1960s and 70s, Hollywood had changed. The new generation of filmmakers wanted realism, rebellion, and raw emotion. Sex was no longer forbidden, it was on the screen. But for Scotty, who had spent decades helping people live their truths in private, this new openness brought mixed feelings. The world was becoming free, but for so many of his friends, it was too late. He often said, "I wish they could have lived long enough to see this, to be who they really were without fear." For decades, Scotty remained silent about his past. He kept the secrets he'd promised to protect. He married, worked as a carpenter and a bartender, and lived a simple, quiet life in Los Angeles. To his neighbors, he was just an ordinary man with an extraordinary kindness. They had no idea that this gentle old man once walked beside legends and carried their hidden truths. Then in 2012, everything changed. Scotty, now in his late 80s, published his memoir titled Full Service: My Adventures in Hollywood and the Secret Sex Lives of the Stars. The book was explosive. Within days, it became one of the most talked about Hollywood tell-alls in decades. In its pages, Scotty described encounters with some of the most famous names in cinema, names like Cary Grant, Katharine Hepburn, Spencer Tracy, Vivian Leigh, Rock Hudson, and many others. Some called it sensational. Others called it a betrayal. But no one could ignore it. For younger readers, the book was a revelation, a reminder that the perfect Hollywood of the past had always been full of contradictions. For the older generation, especially those who had lived through those years, it was painful, a reopening of wounds that had long been buried under golden nostalgia. Journalists asked Scotty if he felt guilty for exposing these secrets after the stars had died. His answer was simple: "I'm not outing anyone. I'm telling the truth. They were wonderful people, kind, generous, and brave. I loved them. I want the world to love them as they really were." Scotty's version of history was raw and intimate, but it was also deeply humane. He didn't describe scandal for shock value. He described loneliness, repression, and the invisible walls of fame. His stories revealed how many of Hollywood's greatest stars were forced to act both on and off the screen, pretending to be something they were not, because society gave them no choice. The controversy surrounding his book only grew when the documentary Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood premiered in 2017. Directed by Matt Tyrnoer, it offered a deeply personal look into Scotty's life. The film didn't just repeat his stories, it captured the sadness behind them. Audiences saw an elderly man walking through the city he once ruled in secret. The gas stations gone, the theaters now digital, the stars replaced by billboards. Scotty looked both proud and nostalgic. He said, "I'm not ashamed of anything I did. I helped people be happy, and if that's wrong, then I don't want to be right." Critics described the documentary as a love letter to the forgotten Hollywood, a story not about sex, but about survival, compassion, and the cost of living behind a mask. And perhaps that's why his story still resonates today. Because even now, decades later, the idea of image versus truth hasn't disappeared. Hollywood still sells perfection, flawless faces, impossible dreams, the illusion of forever happiness. But underneath, there's still pressure, loneliness, and fear of judgment. Scotty's world may have been hidden in shadows, but its spirit still lingers in every corner of show business. There's something deeply tragic about the way those golden age stars lived. They were adored by millions, but trusted almost no one. They had everything: money, fame, beauty. And yet many died feeling unseen. They smiled for cameras, attended premieres, and won Oscars, but when the lights went out, they were just people longing for love. Scotty understood that better than anyone. He saw through the glitter. He saw the humanity behind the headlines. That's what made his story different. It wasn't about exposing, it was about remembering. As he grew older, people often asked him if he ever regretted being part of that secret world. He always laughed and said, "Regret? No, it was a beautiful time. The only tragedy was the pretending." And maybe that's the real truth about Hollywood's golden era. It wasn't just an age of movies. It was an age of masks. Behind every perfect smile was a secret. Behind every love story on screen was another story that could never be told. Scotty's life reminds us that fame doesn't erase human needs. It only hides them better. In the end, his legacy isn't about scandal, but about honesty. The courage to look at history without the golden filter of nostalgia. He passed away in 2019 at the age of 96. Until his final days, he remained unapologetic, charming, and full of stories. He often joked, "When I die, Hollywood will finally be able to sleep peacefully again." But maybe, in a way, it never should, because as long as people believe in the illusion of Hollywood, stories like Scotty Bowers are necessary to remind us that behind every shining light there's always a shadow. And perhaps that's what makes the Golden Age so unforgettable. It wasn't perfect. It was human, messy, passionate, flawed, and alive. The movies of that era gave us dreams. Scotty Bowers gave us the truth. The sun has long set on the Hollywood of Scotty Bowers' time. The neon lights of the 1950s gas stations are gone. The laughter of the movie stars has faded into static memories, and yet the echoes of that hidden world still linger in the dusty air of Los Angeles. If you walk down Hollywood Boulevard today, all you see are tourists, souvenir shops, and the stars on the Walk of Fame. But if you look closer, if you let your mind drift into the past, you can almost see the silhouettes of those who once lived double lives. You can almost imagine that small gas station, the one that looked ordinary from the outside but held 1,000 secrets behind its doors. That was Scotty's world, a world of contradictions, beauty and pain, glamour and fear, desire and loneliness. And through it all, he remained the one man who never judged, never betrayed, and never lost his sense of humanity. Hollywood's golden age will forever be remembered for its charm. Marilyn Monroe's smile, Cary Grant's confidence, Hepburn's grace, Bogart's intensity. But what we often forget is the cost of that perfection. Every smile was rehearsed, every romance scripted, every scandal buried deep under contracts and lies. The stars didn't belong to themselves. They belonged to the studios, to the fans, to the illusion. Scotty understood that better than anyone. He saw the pain behind the laughter, the fear behind the fame. He saw what it meant to live under the spotlight, where a single rumor could destroy everything you've built. He gave those stars what no studio could ever offer them: privacy, acceptance, and the simple right to be human. For some, Scotty was a controversial figure, a man who talked too much, who dared to reveal what was meant to stay hidden. But for others, especially those who lived through repression and judgment, he was a quiet hero. His story wasn't about exposing secrets, it was about showing compassion in a time when compassion was rare. In the later years of his life, when he finally shared his memories with the world, Scotty did it gently. He didn't mock or sensationalize. He spoke with warmth and nostalgia, the kind that comes from truly loving the people whose secrets he kept. He wasn't trying to bring down the legends of Hollywood. He was honoring them by telling the truth that stars are human, that fame doesn't protect anyone from loneliness, that behind every perfect photograph, there might be a broken heart. When Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood premiered, many younger viewers saw old footage of Hollywood's glamorous past and wondered, was it all an illusion? Maybe it was. But what Scotty's story reminds us is that even illusions are built by real people, with real desires, fears, and hopes. In one scene from the documentary, Scotty sits quietly in his garden, holding a black and white photo of himself from decades ago. His eyes are moist, his smile soft. "They were all my friends," he says. "Good people. They just couldn't be themselves." That one line carries the weight of an entire generation. A generation forced to hide who they were, not because they were ashamed, but because the world wasn't ready to see them. And that's the tragedy behind the glamour. Hollywood taught the world how to dream, but it didn't always allow its dreamers to be real. Scotty's story is a mirror for all of us, because even today, in a world of Instagram filters and perfect online lives, we still wear masks. We still hide our pain, our truth, our real selves. We still live in fear of judgment. But if a man like Scotty, living in the 1940s, a time far harsher than today, could show such acceptance and kindness, then maybe we can too. Maybe we can learn to see beyond appearances, to look past the image and find the person within. When Scotty Bowers passed away in 2019, there were no flashing lights, no big tributes on television. But among those who knew his story, there was a quiet sense of gratitude. Because he wasn't just part of Hollywood's secret history, he was a reminder that love in all its forms deserves dignity. The world he lived in has changed. Today, actors and artists can be open about who they are. They no longer need a gas station on Hollywood Boulevard to feel safe. But the reason they can do that, the reason we can all live a little more freely, is because of people like Scotty, who chose understanding over judgment. In the end, Scotty Bowers didn't just serve gasoline, he served something far greater, humanity. And that's what makes his story so timeless. It's not just a Hollywood tale, it's a human one. It's about kindness in secret, loyalty in silence, and truth hidden under the glow of fame. So the next time you see an old Hollywood film, remember, Behind every perfect scene, there were real hearts beating, real souls longing to be seen. And somewhere among them, unseen but essential, was Scotty Bowers, the quiet man who helped them live, love and breathe in a world that only allowed them to pretend. Because maybe, just maybe, the real magic of Hollywood wasn't in its movies. It was in the people who kept its secrets with love. And this was the untold truth behind the glamour, the story of a man who lived in the shadows of legends and yet carried their secrets with love. Scotty Bowers was never a movie star, but his story revealed the heart of old Hollywood, a world full of dreams, lies, love and silence. He reminded us that behind the fame and beauty, every star was just human. If you love stories that uncover the real face of Hollywood, the stories that history tried to hide, then don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel.